Joining me now is the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on.
We are going to get to the UAW strike, but first I want to talk about this potential government shutdown. All sides dug in the Republican House, understanding that the fight is over there. But take me behind the scenes. What is President Biden, the administration, doing to try to avert a shutdown at this critical moment?
Well, President Biden and the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, reached a deal earlier this year. So the focus of the administration is to get the House Republicans to live up to a deal they already made. And by the way, that wasn't the easiest deal to accept. It included cuts to things I was hoping to do in transportation, just to take one example. But it's the deal that we have now. For some House Republicans to be propelling us toward a shutdown means, among other things, that air traffic control training would stop. It means that air traffic controllers who would continue going to the towers to work would not be getting paid. Think about how stressful of a job that is on the best of days. And now we'd be asking them to show up to work with the added stress of not getting a paycheck. Not to mention the service members not getting paid, all of the other unacceptable things that would go along with a shutdown.
And Mr. Secretary, I understand the fight is with the House, but again, if there's a shutdown, it falls on everyone's shoulders. There is some movement potentially in the Democratic-led Senate to try to reach a deal. Is President Biden doing anything? Why not use his bully pulpit more to try to avert this?
Well, again, the president is focusing on trying to get the House to honor the deal they already made. The Senate is ready to go. The administration is ready to go.
Does he have a role in this, though, and a responsibility?
Well, of course. And the most frustrating thing, of course, is that the president and the administration have a responsibility to make sure no matter what Congress does, that the country keeps on succeeding. And that's what we're doing. But we're doing it, and he's leading us in doing it with a focus on not allowing a shutdown to happen in the first place. And, by the way, the cuts that House Republicans are threatening the shutdown over would also cut into things like
Very quickly, do you think a shutdown is all but inevitable at this point?
It can't be. We can't let it be. This is no way to run the government of the most powerful nation on earth.
All right, let's turn to the UAW strike. President Biden, who calls himself the most pro-union president, is heading there on Tuesday. As I said, a day before former President Trump, the GOP frontrunner, is going. Is President Biden going to try to avert any potential momentum Mr. Trump could gain with union workers, that critical voting bloc?
Look, I think this is President Biden being who he is, which is a deeply pro-worker president. You know, not only compared to the anti-union tendencies of the Trump administration, but compared to any other modern president. President Biden is proud to be the most unapologetically pro-worker, pro-union president we've had. And that's going to be on display, I think, when he's on those picket lines. Now, he and we want the auto companies, the auto sector to succeed as well, and are pushing the parties to get to a win-win deal that does right by workers.
What's a win-win deal? What does the president want to see out of this deal? Does he want the workers to get the pay increases that they're asking for?
What the president said is that when you have record profits in this industry, there ought to be record pay and record benefits going to the workers who are creating that value. That's only fair. That's only sensible. And by the way, it's in keeping with the great tradition of how the middle class was built in the first place. My hometown, South Bend, Indiana, home of UAW, Local 5, Local 9, our middle class was built on those good-paying jobs. The unions and the president want to make sure that those jobs are good-paying going into the future.
Let me try to pin you down a little bit more, because one of the other items that labor workers are asking for, more controversially, is a 4-day work week with 5 days of pay. Would the president support that? Does he think that's right?
Well, again, he supports them getting a record deal. He and the administration we're not at the table, right? We're not part of the negotiations. We're not doing the numbers. That's for the companies and the unions to do. But what the president is making clear is that he is leading an economy where people need to, as he says, where the economy needs to grow from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down. It's a stark contrast from the economic vision you saw in the last administration, or that you see now with congressional Republicans who are more interested in corporate tax cuts and are anti-union.
Let me let you respond to one of the other issues at play here. Some Republicans say that the push for electric vehicles to meet emission rules ultimately will cost workers jobs. How does the White House respond to that, and do you see that as a real problem?
Workers are smarter than that, and the UAW has made clear that they are not trying to pretend that we can trap Americans in the technologies of the past. most people who are clear-headed about this recognize that the transition to that new technology, that's already underway. It's happening with or without us. And under the Trump administration, they allowed China to build an edge in that. We're making sure that that is a made-in-America EV revolution.
But EVs do require fewer jobs. What happens to those positions, Mr. Secretary?
Well, you're going to see an auto sector grow on American soil where there will be more American jobs to be had. Yes, EVs are better vehicles, including in the sense that they have fewer moving parts. They don't break down as often. They also represent a huge growth area for America to reclaim more of the sector. Remember, after a manufacturing recession under the last administration, we're seeing a manufacturing boom under this administration. This really can be a win-win-win. And to be clear, there's no going back. I mean, this technology is coming to the global auto industry with or without us. The question is, will American workers thrive?
Let me ask you about what we are seeing at the border. Recently, the administration sent 800 active duty troops to the Texas border to deal with a surge in migrants, some record numbers this past week. Was the Biden administration caught off guard by this latest surge of migrants?
Well, what you saw was the administration, as always, responding as needed to conditions, being proactive where necessary.
Were you caught off guard, though?
Look, the president did what needed to be done, and often that involves a rapid response, like the rapid response that this administration directed. But also what we see is a political dynamic where some people seem to prefer that the problem continue rather than to do something to actually solve it. And I have to say that kind of reminds me of what's going on in the funding fight, where some of the very same people who would line up to take a shot at the administration over something like air travel disruptions are also trying to disrupt us from training more air traffic controllers.
Mr. Secretary, just finally, I want to get your reaction to an opinion piece by David Ignatius that got a lot of attention from Democrats. Writing in the Washington Post, he says of the Biden-Harris ticket, quote, "It's painful to say that, given my admiration for much of what they have accomplished. But if he, President Biden, and Harris campaign together in 2024, I think Biden risks undoing his greatest achievement, which was stopping Trump." How do you respond to that?
Winning the election was the beginning, not the end, of President Biden's achievements. And since then, we have seen more jobs created than under any presidential term in American history. We've seen an infrastructure bill that so many other presidents and Congresses promised and failed to deliver. The achievements are being stacked one on top of another, and that work needs to continue in the administration. Obviously, I can't talk about the campaign side in this capacity, but look, we've got a lot to be proud of, and I'm proud to serve under President Biden and Vice President Harris.
All right. Secretary Buttigieg, thank you so much for joining the program this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.